to order. Sandy, can you call the roll? Bianca Tanis. Here. Johanna Hergat.
Here.
Diana Armstead. Present. Brian Kinnear.
Here.
Len LaPope.
Here.
Heather O'Donnell.
Here.
Tracy Thompson.
Here.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic by which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there are no agenda changes. So that brings us to the public hearing on the Code of Conduct. We will be hearing from Ricky Butler, Director of Student Support Services, and Johanna Hergat.
Am I here? Good evening. Okay. It was my pleasure to work with Johanna on the proposed changes for the Code of Conduct for the 22-23 school year. Our work commenced in virtual subcommittee meetings this year because of COVID. Instead of meeting together in the special ed conference room and district office, we met virtually. It worked well. We started our work in October of 21. We finished in April this spring. Johanna and I continued fine-tuning into the month of May. I want to first thank the Code of Conduct subcommittee members. Sydney Myers, she's a rising sophomore at New Paltz High School. She gave us the student perspective, and she started out very early. We usually don't get students so young participating, so I hope that she will continue to participate through to her senior year. I hope she enjoyed her experience, and she was a great help to us for giving us the student voice. There was Maggie Carpenter, a community member and a frequent participant in both the Code of Conduct and Wellness subcommittees. Dr. Samuel Sims, principal of New Paltz High School and a new colleague with whom I've had the pleasure to work with this year. Board of Ed Vice President Joanna Hergat. It was great working with you this year, Joanna. And myself, Ricky Butler, Director of Student Support Services and the Health Advisory Committee Chairperson. We made outreach in October to the building administrators, clinicians, counselors for suggestions for change for the Code of Conduct back in October. We want to thank the many individuals and groups who met to review the code and make very constructive and well thought out suggestions for changes. Parent communication to building administrators was very important and very strongly considered when making changes to the code. The following factors were taken into account to determine what changes needed to be made. What have been the concerns that impact student and faculty safety, student ability to be present for instruction and learning, student attendance, student social and emotional well-being, the smooth operation of school buildings, and especially in light of COVID and the impact it had on all of us. We determined that the following issues were of great concern. Cyberbullying, the abuse of social media. We've had many code infractions of this nature over the year, and they've increased since our return from the COVID pause. And it created an impact on student social emotional well-being, student attendance, increased disruptions to teaching and learning, and we've made changes and addressed cyberbullying and social media throughout the code. It wasn't there before, but one of Johanna's big concerns was the cyberbullying, so we discussed that quite a bit. Okay, we wanted to consider the inclusion and respect for non-binary individuals in the use of pronouns, to acknowledge and increase the sense of safety and belonging to individuals who may not identify with a specific gender. And you'll notice that throughout the code. Instead of he or she, we would put in there and so forth. We wanted to make sure that we were specific about that. We also removed the use of the word punishment from the code in favor of the term disciplinary intervention or discipline, which includes restorative justice and referrals to counselors and clinicians so that students may learn alternatives to their behaviors and coping strategies. It's well documented that the term punishment is not effective in changing behaviors. The act of punishment is not effective in changing behaviors. Teaching alternatives to behaviors and the restorative justice practice of working with and accepting those who cause harm back in into the community does work. We address the importance of partnerships with parents regarding the code. There is on page 9, attachment, it's addressed in attachment D. Parents should know the code, discuss with their children as appropriate the code, report violations of the code. We also made a suggestion that parents should check their elementary school children's cell phones and social media presence, because there is an increasing number of issues with elementary school students and their cell phones. We used to only be concerned about middle and high, now there's a concern for elementary school. And this information reaches back to us from the school principals, from parents, from counselors, and so forth. We hear about these things and we include them when we address the changes that need to be made in the code. So that's page 9, attachment B. You'll see where we made that change. We added to prohibited conduct the use of cell phone cameras to take photos and videos of staff, faculty, and students without permission. I have conducted different investigations over the course of the year, and very often they include an infraction involving students taking unwarranted pictures of other students, videos of other students, videos of teachers, and then doing unsavory things with them. So we wanted to make sure we address that. The use of cell phone cameras is now prohibited, and it's very specific in the code on page 11, attachment C. We made the formal introduction of restorative justice into the code, along with the support of clinicians and counselors in the disciplinary intervention process. Our school social workers have just one session remaining in their restorative justice training, and they've also participated with me in book groups regarding restorative justice as part of their training. They'll have a significant role in supporting administrators, staff, and students to create a culture of care in our school district. And this is part of our ongoing 5-year plan in training everyone in restorative justice, and it's going very, very well, so we wanted to add that to the code and to our disciplinary procedures. We added an emphasis of the role of the supportive counselors and clinicians in meeting with students to address code infractions and to make referrals to outside therapeutic resources as needed. Page 14 and page 16 and attachment D have the mentions of those, the addition of school counselors and clinicians to the disciplinary and restorative process. There's an addition of the prohibition of other illegal substances under state and federal law, in addition to marijuana. We had only the mention of marijuana being prohibited in our schools. I spoke to David Shaw, our district attorney, and he recommended that we include all other illegal substances that are legal under state and federal law. We have students who are vaping, we have students who are engaging in other things, so we just put a blanket, all substances that are illegal under state and federal law. Also, in light of the installation of the Raptor ID system, thank you to the Hack Safety Committee and all others, Safety Subcommittee and all others who were involved in that installation. School visitors, we made a note that they have to show ID and sign in order to enhance safety protocols in our buildings. That's noted on page 34, attachment M. And then there's a specific change about DASA. Johanna, did you want to speak about DASA?
No, that's okay, you can.
Okay.
Go for it.
we always had information and paragraphs on DASA, but one thing that we didn't have in the code was a specific listing of the Dignity Act coordinators in every building. We have coordinators in every building that do the DASA investigations, make the reports, and work with parents and faculty and students. So on page 36, there's a new attachment, attachment O, that lists all of the Dignity Act coordinators and their contact information, where parents can get in touch with them directly. So that's listed in the Code of Conduct. It's on our website, and it's also in our DASA booklet that we have in all of the buildings that gives that information as to who to contact. And those are the changes, and we were happy to work together to make those changes on behalf of our school district. And we hope that you agree that the changes were warranted and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think they were great.
Any questions I can answer for you?
I think that every year, Ricky, when you have these changes, they're continually, I love that it's a living document, and I really appreciate the changes. They're really thoughtful.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only question I had was about the piece on cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason why it only says elementary?
Well, there was already a concern and addressing of, excuse me, how can I put it? Johanna, I think that when we discussed this, middle school and high school students, it's a big ask,
Yeah.
I think, with regard to the nature of adolescence, for parents to ask parents to check those cell phones, check the social media presence. Students at that age can be very resistant, and it could cause other problems. We want to bring their attention to the elementary school students. It's not always an innocent use of that privilege. And as the students get older and they move into middle school, they've already gotten a lot of skills and they've already had a lot of access, and it impacts them in the middle school. So what we'd like to do is to ask the parents to start checking those phones in elementary school, so that the students know what's proper, what's appropriate, as opposed to what is not when they get into the middle school.
It's hard to believe that elementary school kids are on social media.
I know.
Believe it.
Yeah.
Believe it. And they're not
They have
making
cell
the best
phones.
choices.
Right, and it also sets a good, precedent if they're getting onto social media, that there's an expectation to check, because that relationship stays as they grow to, within.
Well, I forgot one very important thing. I don't know how I skipped over it because it's very important. We make a lot of mention of student accountability. We didn't have that in the code before. And with the implementation of restorative justice in our district over time, it has a very big emphasis on accountability, accepting responsibility, and then understanding the person harmed, understanding their perspective and how they felt by the infraction of the code. So we wanted to make sure that student accountability was a part of our code. I don't know how I skipped that. That was probably one of the biggest things that we talked about in the beginning, right?
It's right at the first page, right on the first page. The chart now says, and are held accountable for. Students have a responsibility to and are held accountable for. And above that, in the second paragraph, give mutual respect and accept accountability for their actions.
Right. And that comes straight out of restorative justice. So, well, thank you very much. Yes?
So REACT still has some concerns with DASA.
Mm-hmm.
And so probably we and REACT should get together and communicate with you to voice and document those concerns, and then you could probably, tonight's not the night obviously to do that, but I just want to register that with you. So in the very near future, you'll hear from REACT and see what we can facilitate to.
Absolutely. I'd be
To share the
happy to
concern.
attend a piece of one of your meetings and answer all of your questions.
Oh, that'd be great.
If you send me the questions ahead of time, I'll be very prepared, and I'll come, take up a little bit of your time, answer your questions, and we're done.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, I forgot your book, by the way. I
I know.
meant to bring your book. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on the code of conduct specifically? Thank you so much, Becky. Thank you, Johanna. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing on the code of conduct?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to adopt, to approve the code of conduct, the 2022-2023 code of conduct?
Are we, and I mentioned that we had some concerns with maybe putting some things in for DASA, so should we approve that, or do you want to put those in there?
I would
Do we-
wait and see, after we meet with Bridget and see.
So we just have to do this before the
Do we have a
end of
time?
school year, right?
A time, yeah,
It has to be approved by June 30th.
Yeah.
by June 30th.
By June 30th?
So you guys can do that, you think, before that?
Yeah, we have a meeting on 14th.
Okay, so then we'll put that on hold. Okay. That brings us to the first public comment on agenda items. Sign up.
Andrew Rodriguez?
So to be concise with my comment tonight, I think the last time I was not as articulate as I normally can be. I typed it, and I will be submitting it formally to the school board clerk. There are no names that I'm going to refer to. Put you at ease.
If there's this on this, the first one is for stuff on the agenda. Is this related to
Excuse
something?
me?
Is this related to something on the agenda?
Yes, it has to do with appointments
Okay.
and the patterns of appointments. The title is called, and this will be brief, it's called Revolving Door for Staff of Color in the New Paltz Central School District. I'm Dr. Edgar Rodriguez, a former board member for 6 years and resident of New Paltz for many decades. In fact, next January 2023, I will complete 50 years that I have been involved in hundreds of different roles in our district, clocking thousands of hours of voluntary service, writing documents, and speaking out on issues. Tonight, I once again speak out on the revolving door of employees of color in our district that I have observed directly in all my different roles for almost 50 years. I have witnessed the catapulting in and out of employees of color with staff titles of custodial, grounds bus, teacher aides, teacher assistants, teacher administrators, and even board members, at a rate that can only be explained by institutional racism, which the school board is ultimately the responsible party to correct, because you have the resources and power for change. But you remain ineffectual in making corrections. You silently and with great skills push out employees of color through the revolving door. Over the past 50 years, I have observed a process of low expectations of our employees of color that become self-fulfilling prophecies. Even from the best of intended board members sitting at the table tonight. For example, in the case of 2 bilingual counselors hired and let go at the same time, one was too soft-spoken, the other was too assertive. In the case of the applicant for a black female applicant for a principalship of one of our school buildings, she was too assertive, while at the same time we had other principals who were known to be very assertive, but then they were white. Employees of color rarely meet the standards of expectations of white people in positions of power. Who will be the next revolving door of employees of color in our district? Who will it be?
Lamina Grace Harmon. Do you, I'm just thinking, do you want to, we don't have committee reports. Sorry.
No problem. Take this off so it can be heard. In an email this week to the Racial Equity Advisory Committee, the Board of Education requested, quote, specific data points for the BOE to request to serve as a baseline for annual reporting on racial disparities within the district. While I am thankful to the board for reaching out to collaborate, I also have significant concern. The entire existence of the Racial Equity Advisory Committee has been spent articulating to the Board of Education data and deliverables that allow for the measurement of equitable practices. I'm not sure what number of times or with what frequency the requests need to be made to be heard and understood and, of course, acted upon. The only idea I have left is to compile a single document containing the full 5 years of observations, recommendations, data requests, toolkits, and resources REAC has offered to the Board of Education. Perhaps with the vast collection of materials in one place, the board would then feel equipped to make concrete changes to policy and procedure that create an equitable learning environment. I've brought just a sampling of the over 500 and I believe 40 such communications. Given that REAC has repeatedly offered useful data markers for measuring progress in equity work, several questions then arise. Does the Board of Education keep any record of the interactions with the Racial Equity Advisory Committee, or does the recall and history reside only within our subcommittee? If the Board of Education does not have any way of reviewing provided resources, then what benefit can REAC be? What will be different about this time when we provide resources? The same message to the Racial Equity Advisory Committee informed us that there would be a later date for the annual report on racial disparities until after the completion of the school year. I completely understand the benefit of a completed school year. However, later I do take issue with, because later is a time frame that is completely hackle-raising to those of us who do equity work. Later, being indefinable, is completely unaccountable. So how long would you say it will be between the end of the school year and a finalized data set being presentable? How close to in real time is that data collected and assimilated? That's also something that I think we've already asked repeatedly. I know I find deadlines helpful, as much as I also find them frustrating. They're necessary. So my question would be, what date would be reasonable for all of us to mark in our calendars tonight for the report on racial disparities? Might that also be a time when we could review some of the many recommendations REAC has made and put some progress report dates, deadlines, to those as well? Sadly, measuring racial disparities is symptom management at best, lab sampling in practice. It is not curative work. So while reporting on racial disparities like X-rays are necessary diagnostic tools, they do not solve any problems. The X-ray does not repair the break. Racial equity work solves problems by addressing root causes, changing patterns of thought and practice, and building a culture of enthusiasm for equity that transcends the discomfort of confronting our own bias and inequitable ways of being. Thus, equity work is ultimately the only meaningful way to remove disparities. If we cannot move past reporting and repeating ourselves, then what hope do we have of substantive change? Actions speak much louder than the same words over and over. So quickly from memory, here are some measurables that I know that the Racial Equity Advisory Committee has requested and or suggested on multiple occasions and in multiple formats. A racial breakdown of disciplinary actions relative to the overall student population. DASA resolutions. What percentage of cases are found to be founded? What data can be provided about the actions taken after the findings have been finalized? Hiring and retention numbers. Percentage of books and curriculum resources that focus on a non-white perspective, have non-white authors, are designed with an equity lens. What is the current size, the frequency of meeting, and the areas of focus for our building racial equity teams? What percentage of the staff have completed any equity training? Broken down by specific trainings, because not all trainings are created equal. And further, what percentage of the staff have done those trainings voluntarily, which says volumes as well. I know I repeat myself, I have said this here before, but two ideas require repeating. First, when we do what is right for those on the margins, everyone wins. It never fails. So while racial equity work may not seem to be your thing, I humbly suggest that you rethink that position. Secondly, equity is a matter of life and death. The news certainly indicates this. Yet the conversations around achieving equity are not held with urgency. They feel like Groundhog's Day. More alarmingly, they feel like 911 calls made from a classroom while the authorities stand in the hall and fumble for the keys. At some point, you either go through the scary door and deal with the problem, or you reveal that you are really more or less okay with the problem. For the record, I've brought, again, that sampling of our communications, as well as the original email that we received from the board and my comments.
Thank you. I think that I'm sure that there's responses, Luminous, but I'm going to say that until board communications. So will you be here for a little bit? For a little bit. Okay, thank you. That brings us to our student representative report from Samantha Longpan.
Hi everyone, I just wanted to say that this is my last board meeting and my last time serving as the student representative in New Paltz High School. And it's been a very active and exciting past few months just for my high school. We've had finals, AP testing, our final sports season, a bunch of college commitments and scholarships and all that kind of stuff. Including concerts, field days, our fun day today, and events just like before summer. And as well as the New Paltz High School National Honor Society inductions, which hopefully are coming soon. I don't have a date for that yet. And the senior class graduation, which I'm going to be a part of. I just wanted to say, for feeling-wise, students are definitely excited for the summer and seniors to move past high school. And just personally, beyond those little updates, I guess I just wanted to say thank you to any peers, parents, faculty, parents for allowing me to get a taste of what it's like to hear in on feedback from our community and from parents and just peers and everything, and also be able to give any ounce of requests and feedback from the students. It's been incredibly rewarding to speak in any way on behalf of the students. I'm beyond excited and confident in seeing other young students in the school take change and make change and take action on the board, and especially after the last two kind of bizarre years, I feel like they have a lot to work on and a lot to do. It's been an honor for the last two, my last senior year and my junior year, to work here, and for the last 18 years of my life for being a part of the New Paltz High School District. Once again, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Congratulations.
Can you please tell us a little bit about your future plans, what you're planning on doing next year?
Yeah, I am going to University of Vermont for my undergraduate, and I'm hoping to follow a pre-med course.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glenn?
Yeah, Sammy, thanks so much. I just wanted, it was great. You were very engaged, sending emails to me about your concerns as the last year and talking to you about stuff. It was good. It's good to have you been here for 2 years. You did a fine job for a difficult couple of years of school. Thank you.
Yeah. And congratulations on your all your scholarship that you got. Yeah.
Are you looking for your replacement? Do you have any interest?
There's a lot of, especially a lot of younger kids in like student government, all that kind of
That's
stuff.
great.
They're very ready.
Send them our way.
So-
Great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to superintendent update.
I'd like to begin my comments this evening by acknowledging the collective anxiety and pain we felt this week as we borne witness to the senseless violence taking place in our nation. I've received several email messages from parents asking about the safety measures that we employ in the district and about additional security measures that can be incorporated. Without going into a great deal of detail regarding security at schools, I do wish to make you aware of some recent updates to the building entries in all of our buildings. The early spring of this year, we began using the Raptor visitor management system. In order for a visitor or a vendor to enter the building, they must scan identification into the Raptor kiosk. Visitors are prompted to scan their ID once they ring the bell to enter. On entry, an adhesive sticker with the name and photo of the visitor is created. Anyone with identification that is flagged will not be allowed entry into the building. This summer, we'll be replacing classroom door hardware in all of the classrooms so that teachers will be able to lock their classroom doors from the inside, eliminating the need to use a key to lock the door from outside in case of an emergency. Additional cameras will be installed both inside and outside of our buildings, expenditures made possible by the federal funding we've received. The district's anonymous tip line has been responsible for alerting building and district administration to situations that people have witnessed or have been made aware of that have found concerning and require investigation. On more than one occasion, an adult in a household will bring forward a concern that their child has shared, and it might have come from social media. These concerns are often communicated via email and are shared with law enforcement when the circumstances warrant it. The New Paltz Central School District has an excellent relationship with the New Paltz PD, and we certainly don't hesitate to contact them when there is an issue that can impact school security. We're constantly reviewing our protocols to be in line with the best practices, safety protocols, and procedures, and we'll continue to do so as safety and security is our priority. Thank you.
That brings us to board communication and discussion items. Before we start this, I did want to use this time to respond to some of the public comment on behalf of REACT. Does anybody want to start with that? Or? Okay. I just want to acknowledge and understand the frustration that you shared. You have given us that information multiple times. What I thought would be different was that we doesn't specify the data points. And that might be something that we need to clarify, because the board can write a policy but not implement it. The specifics are left to the administration. And I know we had planned to have that report, and Angela had advised not yet. But I do think there's certain things that I think the board can be more proactive in holding the district accountable to collecting this information, monitoring if it's being collected, that we're on track for the implementation of this policy. Because I have questions. There's things in the policy. Has the policy been translated? Has it been put into student handbooks? I mean, these are sort of the things, I don't know if you can speak to any of that, Angela, but those are things in the policy that to me can be checked off pretty quickly. Then there's some things that are long-term, such as a curriculum audit, but the policy does say that there should be a plan with a timeline. I don't know, again, you know, I would have to ask the superintendent where we're at with that. You know, and I don't say this as an excuse, but the board has no role in actually collecting the data, but I want to acknowledge that we have to do a better job of holding the district and everyone who has a hand in that accountable to doing that. And that's really all that I can say, and I can pledge to do a better job of that. I don't know if anybody has anything to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that. I know a lot of the items that were brought up are, I hate to say it, but operational and not something under the board's purview. Like, I personally don't know how many, sessions teachers have had as far as social justice and their work with Due East. That would be something administration handles, not the board. I mean, and Bianca's absolutely right. We can take an active role by trying to, get more information from our administration to relay to REACT. So,
And it does
yeah.
also require a biannual report out, which has also not happened, and I want to acknowledge that. So, that's what I have to say. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that, but.
I think it takes a little more than that. It takes the interest and the need and the want to do it. So, you know, the board has gotten involved in operational stuff that is, perhaps we shouldn't be, but it has happened. So I can't accept that as an excuse. But certainly, where there lies an interest and a desire, that draws conversation, and that does not happen here. Just in line with some of the concerns of REACT, are also things that we were moving forward with in equity in terms of Chief Mann. You know, there's no follow through on that. It was canceled or something a few weeks ago, but there's been no follow-up. One in particular, in terms of the issue of equity, was the request I made months ago for the elementary schools to provide information and provide feedback and do a second presentation. And Bianca, you said that was going to possibly happen on May 4th or May 18th. There's been no follow-up. So again, it's, I'm going to take responsibility as a board member for things that we should take responsibility for. But when we just, don't follow up, that's a reflection on us. It has nothing to do with, getting that information solely from the superintendent. We're supposed to work together to get all that information, not just expect it to show up on her lap or whoever's lap. So, you got to take more responsibility. And, the report that I requested for the children, I mean, that's some serious information I requested, and it never came through. And when I think back in years gone by, there's always been an issue with elementary schools and admins and whatever. But it's more than that. I would really like to know who is the holdup. I mean, we've had admins change year after year, but there's one common factor that exists. And so I would really like to know why the information about the students who get the AIS services, who need them, has never come to fruition. That's just sinful.
I can actually answer that. You in March requested information from Angela on a breakdown of students who receive AIS by gender, ethnicity, language, and Angela provided that to you just prior to the spring break. Mm-hmm. Over the spring break, you requested that the information be presented in person. So you requested that in April. Angela reached out to me and asked me to clarify with you because we weren't sure exactly what you were asking for. You told me you were going to touch base with Angela. I don't know if that happened. you followed up on it, and Angela had shared that we couldn't schedule, you wanted it the Wednesday after spring break. That would have given staff 2 days' notice. So that was shared by Angela, that would have given staff 2 days' notice, and it wasn't possible. These presentations are typically scheduled far in advance. For example, the racial equity, the anti-racism policy report that was supposed to have been taking place tonight, we discussed an agenda setting, I want to say end of February, beginning of March was when that was scheduled. It was scheduled that far out. So that's why that didn't take place. And that, you know, I'm happy to re-forward the emails. We do have that data. I don't know if you shared that with REACT, but we do have that table that has all of that information broken down. So I hopefully that answers that question.
Well, it really doesn't, because
Okay.
the 4th and the 18th of May is when the dates that were put out, and there's been nothing since then. So I say again, where is the drive and the interest of the board to have this information? And not only that, I get questioned by my 2 board members, like, what am I really looking for? Why do I want that information? You have to be kidding me.
No,
We're talking about kids. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but that's what it was. What is it that you're trying to get? I want to know how our young ones in the elementary school, those who are marginalized, those who have to talk with a mask, how are they progressing? That's what I wanted to know.
Diana, when I asked for
Let me
clarification,
finish.
sure.
What are they stuck on? What extra services do they need? It's a simple thing. I won't sit here and think that it takes 3 months to plan something like that. I won't accept that.
I would say that since it is Angela who has to bring that to the administrators, and it is Angela who asks for clarification, that's all I can say about that, because I don't reach out to administrators.
So the board just
about
doesn't
that.
take any responsibility?
that's-
Excuse me, but the board represents the people. And Angela should not have all that responsibility, especially since I elected each board member to do this and to help the administration. So let's not keep on throwing it on the administration. You board people have responsibility in this also.
All I'm saying is things get delayed where things should really be happening, and it does not appear to be an interest and a concern for the majority of the board.
So
That's it.
Angela, what about them?
Okay.
Listen,
I've already talked to Bianca, like, you know, I'm known in the community as a doer. So I was like, please put me on REACT next year, because I will come to the meetings, I'm interested, I am, you know, enthused, and I will get stuff done. So if you want me, I'm yours. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
One of the things
Yeah.
I wanted to mention though from earlier, when you opened up the conversation about Limina's testimonial comment, is that, you know, one of the examples too is that, you know, we're asking for a lot of data at REACT, you know, to be able to offer recommendations, to offer insights, to look at patterns, you know, and we need, of course, that data to do that. But the other, and part of that reason is because REACT is very much underutilized by the BOE. And I think a real example of that is that we were not asked, for example, to do the code of conduct, look through the code of conduct with an equity lens. We didn't even know that that was a process that was happening. And so whenever I'm just attending and hearing kind of the report out, and yes, of course, Frederica is on, you know, and doing it through restorative justice. That's absolutely great. But if we're also looking from the BOE side as somebody who also wants to look through an equity lens, I'm not saying, of course, that, you know, Johanna, you can't do that. Of course you can. But at the same time, we've been kind of steeped in all of this stuff from, you know, teachers, parents, community members, you know, trying to really look through these issues. And so, you know, when you ask, is there any any thoughts or feedback from the public, you know, this is the first time I've ever heard of it. And I feel like we could have had a REACT member sit on that group and offer some real insights, because now we're saying we have to approve it by June 30th. We have really substantive things about DASA that we want to share and think about, and probably would have substantive things about the code of conduct to share. But there's no time for us to give that, to make any changes, than to approve it by June 30th. It's not going to happen. So really, it's just pro forma, saying these are our issues, and then we'll consider it for next year. So the opportunity was lost. So we really need to be thinking not just about like, oh, we're gonna have this meeting, we're gonna do that thing, that these, and we need it, to check off the boxes that we did this, but to think about how is this gonna be integrated into the long-term vision of our school board, of our district, and how we work together. I mean, REACT is a little island trying to figure out how we can make a positive contribution to this community and this, and we're pulling our hair out, trying to figure out, because every time it's like, can we do this, can we do that? No, it's not your terrain, you can't do that. So we're trying to figure out, so the least we can do is be like, can you give us numbers so we can look at numbers? But I think just like, we said, numbers give us something, but they don't give us solutions. And we want to be part of that solution. So I hope you'll give us more opportunities to be integrated into some of the kind of procedural stuff that the BOE does. And one of our recommendations that we're coming through with is, or that we will put forward, is having one of the REACT members sitting on the policy committee of the BOE as a standing member. So we will volunteer an extra night during the month.
It sounds like the connection between REACT and the board is not working.
Right.
And for example,
No, I wouldn't say that.
not working in terms of the communication. So I don't know, because the board is broken up into committees. So for example, even though in the back of my head, I know that every year we re-adopt the policy committee, that didn't occur to me till I saw it on the agenda, because HAC was working on that. So we work in these pockets kind of. So it almost sounds like there should be a REACT representative on every committee, because as volunteers, we're working in little silos,
Sure.
that wouldn't even, those cross connections
Right.
are not always
So yeah,
clear.
we would be certainly
Yeah.
open to that if
Yes.
BOE is
And
willing to consider that.
the if equity is your foundation, then everything naturally flows out of that, and everything that you're trying to do after, a little momentum built up, because that's always the hard part, gets easier. All of it gets easier for you, right? Like it is very frightening to pull a Band-Aid off, but isn't it great when you pull it off and, oh look, it's all healed? Like you can, so yes, there should be a member of REACT on every standing committee. Anytime, if you haven't looked at a policy, an idea, a practice, and said, is it equitable? It won't be, because you're not trying to make it equitable.
So Ricky wanted to say something. Yeah.
I can wait.
Okay, because I wanted to say, yeah, all right.
I just
We'll
want,
go
I
around
have a
this
couple questions. So I think it's a great idea to have someone from REACT on every committee. So how would you have to check with the people on REACT to see if they have that
Capacity.
the capacity to do that?
Yeah, and we might have to prioritize depending on how many people we have who have the capacity of like which committees that we definitely feel like we need to prioritize to get in, and then others outside of that.
So when the board committees are reorganized in July, could we,
We
would
can
you guys
just
be
leave,
able
we
to
can
have
bookmark
that
a spot.
looked at by then?
Yeah, we have a
Like,
meeting
have
on
li-
the 14th, so we can talk about it then and look at, I assume all the standing committees are on the website, we'll just look at those.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
And like the one that I've been doing, facilities, anyone's welcome. So anybody could just come. I don't know if
it's more
everybody
just
knows
getting,
that, like the
you know,
community
really
can come.
insight and being kind of like a voting member of sorts.
So
or
what do
something.
we have to do as a board for when the reorg meeting happens in July? Instead of having, I know that we put, some committees have 2 community members, for us to just put a member of REACT on the committee, could we?
We could just wait, because we have members of some committees who have terms, that could be a 2 years, 3 years, so I wouldn't want to bump them, but we could add a spot to each committee.
Okay, I
that's
Matt
thought
is
the
gonna be
idea
on the
should-
board,
should we
and-
add a
Well,
spot
but that's
for-
like, I don't think we have to get into specifics, but
No,
we
but I
can
mean,
just
somebody, we
ensure-
can have a REACT member on facilities.
So
as in-
is there a policy, like, do we need to create, can we just, if REACT is interested and they have the available people power,
Right.
can't we just make a motion that when the reorg meeting happens, that REACT gives us a name of a person they would like on each committee, and then that's that?
So some of the committees the membership is dictated by policy, but Brian, do you think that you could look at those committees and see if any of the charges have to be amended? And then we could do that on the 15th, and then at the reorg meeting, that would be part of the.
So it's your 14th meeting, you can kind of take a look at the website. I mean, some of the committees are more exciting than others, and some are more in the wheelhouse, people that are interested. So we could make this happen for the reorg meeting in July.
And I would say, even if you don't have names of people, that could be part of it, that there's a spot earmarked on that committee. Do you know what I mean? So that even if, let's say, because I think it's a lot to ask, REACT has a committee that meets monthly, to ask people to also commit to another committee, so that if there's a spot for REACT, and let's say, Limina, you can go 1 month to the policy committee, and maybe the next year Laura can go, in the next month Laura can go. This way it's just a standing spot to make it.
As long as there's a standing spot.
To make it, as unburdensome, is that a word? Unburdensome?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I had another question. You mentioned about the literature, authors of color, which equity lens is coming through. So you're just looking right at, because I know there was also been talk about an audit, a curriculum audit, which would be great, which would be committed to a plan. You're just looking to see what's happening right now in the schools and what books teachers are reading, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
You need basic.
Right,
Yeah,
like where are we now, so that we even,
Yeah.
right, like, it would be lovely to give out gold stars and to say like, our baseline is awesome. We don't know, right? So like, we don't even have information to give out gold stars with. Like, we like gold stars, like, we're not, like, part of our job is to show up and say, hi, look over here. But we really love to say, this is amazing.
And it's also not to shame faculty who don't have that either.
No.
It's also about like, okay, and what resources do we need to be able to get, everything up to snuff, right?
You can't know what you need until you know what you have.
Exactly.
No, and the school where I work, we performed a similar thing, the books, and it was a kind of a distant, there was a lot of teachers felt almost like, I'm embarrassed by what we're reading, and basically what it came down to is when the administration said, we'll buy you whatever you want. So then once it came on the page, and then we kind of did it with the English and global studies and US history, going through that and new materials being published. So how do we go about, as soon as possible? I know we probably have to email the teachers and say, what are you reading in your classes?
But I don't think the board can't do that. Angela, I don't know if you want to jump in at any point, but that's something that we can commit money to, and we can make it a priority.
Right, yeah.
But we can't actually email the teachers and ask them what they're teaching. As a teacher, if a board member emailed me and said, what are you teaching? I would be a little alarmed.
And I think before moving forward with that, the board in and of itself needs to come to terms with where you are in terms of equity and where you are in terms of your fragility, because it still exists. It clearly still exists. And what happens and what is happening is just a lot of intellectual dishonesty going on. And until you address your own issues on race, racism, equity, you're gonna stay right where you are. Next term is going to be a board with no diversity whatsoever. And this current board is not prepared, based on my observations, what I've seen and what I've heard, to move forward and make stuff happen. So you gotta be like in it to win it, as corny as it sounds, but what I hear and what I see is just a lot of intellectual dishonesty.
I disagree.
Well, hold on.
I'm always in it to win it.
Diana, I certainly don't disagree with you at all about a lot of what you said, but I think the board's trying to move forward by getting a hold of some of these reading materials and be willing to commit to purchasing some other materials.
But you gotta understand it within yourself before you can promote something.
I mean, I certainly think I do.
I'm not talking individually, but the board as a whole, absolutely not.
But, I mean, I think REACT's asked for this baseline before. I want to make it happen.
Right.
Can't we ask what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the teachers would be more than willing to know that they could get some new materials.
Yeah, I think there's a disconnect because, you know, we're, you know, a Board of Education, we're unpaid volunteers, but we have people in this district that we pay to, and I trust those people. I mean, you know, you were saying about the code of conduct and all that stuff, like, you know, when I read Ricky's report, I was thrilled. The changes they made were amazing, you know, so I mean, you know, Ricky's a paid employee here. I trust Ricky to do the right thing with the code of conduct. So, you know, I mean, that's the whole, you know, there's, you know, we're, like I said, we're unpaid. We have people that we pay in this district to do their jobs, and, you know, we have to put our faith in those people.
I'm just to move this forward, so I feel like we have some good direction to move forward with, and we'll revisit the things we talked about on the 15th. So that brings us to, we don't have committee reports. Committees have not met. We do? We do? Oh, I'm sorry.
React.
Sure. So there's no minutes.
The audit committee.
Audit committee.
Oh, right, yeah. I wasn't there, sorry.
Sure, I'll talk. We had a very nice meeting. It was the last of our year. Probably the most important thing is we were able to finally get the external audit kicked off. And so the external audit is the process which we are legally required to do for those who are unfamiliar. And we contract out with an audit firm who basically comes in and verifies the financials, as well as does some just kind of testing of business processes. So the whole board, as well as the audit committee members, should have received a questionnaire from the audit auditor regarding any questions of fraud or concern within the district. And those are always, how do I want to say it, confidential. And it's a very standard practice that happens every year for anyone who's not familiar. The other two things I believe you have on your agenda, and that was the corrective actions. So Deb came with a very thorough list of corrective actions for our internal audit, as well as corrective actions for our last internal audit that were just updated, which thank you. And then another thing that we've been in discussion with was financial reporting. And so one of the things hopefully you should be seeing, I believe, next meeting probably is an updated financial reporting so that you have more complete budget status, which is yay. And budget and revenue. So you should be receiving that monthly, and I encourage all of you to talk to Deb if there's any questions about what that report says, as well as any of the audit members.
And that will include budget transfers too, in that?
We didn't discuss the actual budget transfers.
Okay.
We discussed the budget status report for expenses for all funds and revenue for all funds.
Can we include budget transfers? And is that?
What it shows is it shows what the appropriation is, the original appropriation, what the current appropriation is, and what that changes. So you can, if you see it on a monthly, you can see what those changes are overall to ask questions. And then you also see how much of that has been encumbered, which is like either spent or committed to be spent, as well as what is unencumbered, which is yet to be spent.
So the budget transfers that are not over a specific amount, we'll just look for them in where they've been.
It's all, yeah, it's kind of like, it's more of like it's like a larger view, which is really kind of where you should be looking. So that way you see the kind of trends of where money is being moved from, because you have all the different administration as well as all the different funds.
Thank you for that.
So, well,
thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go over the corrective action plans?
Yep.
With regards to the corrective action plans, for the 2021 school year, we had to do a revised one per the Office of Auditing Services. There were some recommendations that the internal auditor proposed that were not on the corrective action plan. And these were, the board is required to have the claims auditor report monthly to you, and she is now doing that. Another item was dealing with outstanding checks. and those checks have been investigated, written off, or reissued. Salary agreements or salary notices should be given to all employees, and they should be returning those salary notices. And that should be done on an annual basis. All grants should be approved in a timely fashion. And the IT department should be doing a vulnerability test from the outside, have a third party test the vulnerability of our network. And that all district policies be reviewed on an annual basis. Those were the new items. That's the revised for 2021. The internal auditor also did their report for the 21-22 school year, and their findings were, their recommendations were salary agreements be done for all salaried employees. This will happen on the first payroll in September. That we do a payroll observation day or a verification day, and that's where employees actually have to show ID and sign for a cashable check. It's to prove whether there's fraudulent employees or not. It'll be taking place at the beginning of September. Another recommendation had to do with cash receipts. The internal auditor wanted 3 people involved in it. Currently, there are only 2 people involved in it. That third person started logging in the checks on May 11th. They also recommended we have a third party review Medicaid reimbursements and whether it's feasible and worth our while to do it. So we will contact the third party and ask them for their help in determining if it's worth our while to do Medicare reimbursements. The grant approvals should be filed in a timely fashion. We'll ensure that their applications are done by the due date. A formal reserve plan needs to be established, looking at having that done by October of 2022. And the federal grants procurement policy with regards to if we receive federal awards or not, and that is on this current board meeting to be approved.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. So just in terms of committee, I wanted to ask all of us to get back into the habit of minutes from committee meetings. We've kind of gotten out of the habit, and in discussion, email discussion with REAC, it just kind of drove it home that we really do need to have the minutes from the meetings submitted to Sandy, so that then we can go on the agenda, especially because now that everything's in board docs, it's all searchable. So if you're ever wondering when something was discussed, or if the community's ever wondering, they can search it. So I just think with everything going on, we've just gotten away from it. Okay, that brings us.
Oh, can I just?
Yes,
I'm sorry. I just wanted to bring up the Ulster County School Boards Association Distinguished Friends of Education Awards. Each year, each Board of Ed in every Ulster County district chooses a recipient as a Distinguished Friends of Education award, and this person is awarded at a dinner. Heather and I went to the dinner this week. Our choice this year was Jim Tinger. Not sure if everybody knows who Jim is. I just want to read a little bit about Jim and just to congratulate him on all he's done for the community. Jim Tinger has been an instrumental part of New Paltz for the past 3 decades. Jim began volunteering at the New Paltz Youth Center 29 years ago, and a year later was appointed the director of the town youth program. Today, Jim manages a staff of counselors of varying ages and personalities so that kids can gravitate towards the person they feel most comfortable speaking and engaging with. To say that Jim has been a significant and influential youth ambassador in the New Paltz community would be an understatement. In addition to fundraising for new vehicles for the youth center, to organizing various art, music, sports, and other activities, Jim has done it all. In 2018, Jim and Phoenix Kawamoto launched a very successful cafe program at the high school here. It's called Cafeteria Alternative for Everyone. The cafe offers high school students a stress-free, relaxed space to take their lunch break in a supervised environment. Everyone in New Paltz is grateful for Jim Tinger and his remarkable efforts over the years. His spirit, enthusiasm, and drive for achieving goals has served our community and its youth so well. We're very proud to honor Jim Tinger this year, and it was a great evening, and we think he's well-deserved of the award. That was one thing, so congratulations, Jim. And the other thing is, I just wanted to mention, as a New Paltz Rotarian, we are very proud this year to be giving 28 scholarships to New Paltz High School graduating seniors. And those seniors will be honored at the Rotary Breakfast, which is next Thursday.
That's great, thank you.
So, good news.
Thank you.
That's Thursday, you said, Teresa?
Next Thursday, yeah. Are
Okay.
you coming?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 10.1. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of the May 18th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of the May 23rd meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That brings us to item 11.1, another one of those agenda items we don't want to approve. We have a retirement, Elizabeth Rizza, 32 years in the district as an elementary teacher.
Wow.
So I just want to say congratulations and hats off, 32 years. I can't wrap my brain around
I know,
that.
right? Wow.
Yeah, that's an incredibly long career, so thank you for that service to the district. Do I have a motion to accept item 11.1?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That brings me to two more retirements. Stephanie Funk, a school bus attendant, 19 years in the district. And Carolyn Mistarka, special ed aide, 22 years in the district. And those are two positions that the district really can't function without. And that's a lot of years of service. So thank you very much. And congratulations. Yes. Do I have a motion to accept items 12.1?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to approve items, the personal consent agenda, items 14.1 through item 16.3?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 17.1, approval of CSE and CPSE recommendations and student placements. So I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 7.2, approval of agreement, the PPS agreement. So I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I have a motion to approve item 18.1, approval of disposal of records?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 internal audit corrective action plan, the revised plan, which was just shared with us by Deb Kaczynski?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 18.3, the 2021-2022 internal audit corrective action plan. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 18.4 is an establishment of the Deborah Ann Banner Memorial Scholarship. One award of $250 will be awarded to a student who has volunteered in a literacy program or who has provided additional academic support to students while attending New Paltz High School. Do I have a motion to approve the scholarship?
So moved.
Discussion?
Go ahead, Brian.
I just, Deb was a assistant superintendent here for 12 years.
Okay.
And an employee here in the district for a lot of years before that. She was here my first year on the board. She was a lovely, lovely person. She passed away in November. I was very sad to hear.
This is a great.
The name sounded familiar and I couldn't
This is
pinpoint.
a really lovely way to honor her service in the district. So thank you to people that are putting the scholarship together.
So I have a question about the scholarship. So how does this work? So, for example, are most of the scholarships like a one-time thing, or are they yearly? So if someone wanted to have scholarships, do you just say, like, let's say, for outgoing seniors, for something they did, and you're willing to give 4 scholarships to
You
two
can
boys
make it
and-
yearly, or you can make it, you know, you can make it once, or you can make it yearly. It's up to the person giving
So
the
you-
scholarship.
And then you give the
or
money
group.
to the school, I would imagine
Yes.
there's a scholarship committee here that they.
There is, yeah,
They pay, okay,
yeah. They get together, and then on graduation day,
okay.
you will see in the program all the students that have gotten those awards every single year.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's a committee here that takes care of all of that.
We have the motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 18.5, BOCES lease agreement. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to item 19.1, which is the procurement uniform grant guidance for federal awards policy, which was recommended as part of the corrective action plan. We're required to adopt this policy. Do I have a motion to adopt policy as is, or do you want to just do a first reading?
You need to do a,
I don't know. I
If
mean,
it's something that we have to do,
We can waive a first reading. This is the boilerplate language, right?
so do we have to do this by, so something we approve next week, the next meeting?
Sooner the better.
Is it mandated?
It is.
So if we read it and then put it on the.
We can, yeah, we can consider this the first read and put it back on the
Okay.
15th. Okay. That brings us to our second public comment. Do you have anyone for the second public comment? Come on down.
I would like to kindly ask the district consider becoming a CPSE evaluator. For those who are unaware, CPSE is the preschool special education program for children 3 to 5 that is run by the county. Your district administers it for all families that are in the New Paltz Central School District, just like every district within the county administers theirs. The current state, at least of EI right now, is that it's pretty overwhelmed. When you talk about preschool special education, I can't because I don't work there, but I know trying to get children into preschool special education right now is almost impossible. I have families that are been waiting for 5 months trying to get evaluations done. If they need bilingual or something in person, it is pretty impossible. I do know that in EI that there are great swaths of families that just aren't there right now, like a lot of the housing insecure and families that I normally would work with, they just don't exist in EI. They exist, they just don't exist in EI. And they are going to, for the next several years, like this is not, they're going to stress preschool special education. School districts, Onteora is the one school district currently that is an approved evaluator. It does not make you have to evaluate students for the county. It gives you the option if you have the staffing to do it. It could be a great use if you have a 0.2 of a professional that you want to have present within the district. I would just encourage you to, at the very least, look at it and evaluate it if that's something that can be done, because the need right now is so great, and all of this impacts your future kindergarten students because they do come in the district, and inevitably they come with less services or no services because they get so frustrated they're literally falling out of the evaluation process.
Thank you for that.
How do you do this? What is there?
I'm not quite sure. The county runs the program, so they are the appropriate people to interact with. There is a whole, I think, fairly straightforward process that is, it may be run by the state, but I know the EI, it runs by the state, but I know that, like, for example, Kathleen Clark works very closely with county officials, so it really is one phone call that they would be able to speak to that.
Do you know who does, when you have bilingual evals for CPSC, who, does that go through BOCES or is that also through the county?
That goes through county, and what happens now is that a person requests a bilingual evaluation and they request an evaluator, they get a list. They don't actually know if the evaluator can do it, and because there's so much churn, what happens is all the stuff gets sent to the evaluator, or to the evaluating agency that's contracted to, and then weeks go by, and then they get thrown back if they don't have the staffing. So there isn't like a really smooth process, if that makes sense. It's a lot of back and forth. I've had, for example, that one family, it's been like 3 different evaluating agencies because they thought they could, and this, there's a lot of churn, so anything that can be done to increase capacity is.
So this is for like us evaluating kids, or for us to
Have a person.
have people here to help?
You would be responsible, so you'd be like a contracted out by the county to evaluate, so you would need someone to it'd probably be Kathleen, I'm assuming, Clark, she would, to coordinate and to make sure that those evaluations happen. You don't have to evaluate someone, like you can say, I can't accept evaluations. And you would probably only accept evaluations from students from New Paltz.
So probably the first step would be to find out from Kathleen how approximately the number, and if that requires an additional staff member.
So like after we would do an evaluation, then the idea is that we would provide services here for the children?
Not necessarily. That is a whole separate, you have like a CSE meeting, what they call which is a CPSE meeting, which is similar to a CSE meeting. They may be placed in a preschool that requires, that has services like Learning Together. They may have a speech provider.
That might be a good presentation for the board for the future on how the CPSC, because I think it is, unless you're in it or you've experienced it, it's confusing how the district meshes with the county on this area, and that would be a good thing for us to understand better.
It's very confusing, which, total side note, but I just want to thank you for this type of discussion that would happen about pre-K. Again, there are schools for pre-K, this intersects with special ed because a lot of the schools that Kingston and Ellendale are contracting out are special ed schools. And so there are class placements. The schools, like, they no longer have a special 8 to 1 to 3 class in Cottico because those classrooms are being used for pre-K. So the mindfulness of trying to do some of it in-house and to really increase
the number of spots
is really important. And I just thank you for having that mindfulness when discussing it.
Thank you for putting that on our radar.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to the end. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Diana and Glenn, are you in favor? We're adjourning?
Yeah. All in favor?
Glenn.